Policemen, as a rule, don't like to hear of new cases, not because they're lazy, but because they want, like everyone else, to find a meaning, a connectedness in the great mess of random unhappiness in which they work. If, in the middle of trying to catch some teenager who's been nicking hubcaps, they're called to a scene of a mass murder, they just can't stop themselves from checking under the sofa to see if there are any hubcaps there. They want to find something that connects to what they've already seen, that will make sense out of the chaos. So they can say to themselves, this happened because that happened. When they don't find it, when all they see is a lot of stuff that has to be written about, and found and lost, and found in someone's bottom drawer, and lost again, and eventually chalked up against no one's name, they get, well, disappointed. They were particularly disappointed by our story. Sarah and I had rehearsed what we thought was a reasonable scenario, and we played 3 performances of it to officers of ascending rank, finishing up with an appalling young inspector who said his name was Brock. Brock sat on the sofa, occasionally glancing at his fingernails, and he nodded his youthful way through the story of the intrepid James Fincham, friend of the family, staying in the spare room on the first floor. Heard noises, crept downstairs to investigate. Nasty man in leather jacket and a black polo neck. No, never seen him before. Fight, fall over. Oh my god. Hit head. Sarah Wolf, D.O.B. 29th August 1964. Heard sounds of a struggle. Came down, saw the whole thing. Drink, Inspector? Tea? Ribena? Yes, of course the setting helped. If we tried the same story in a council flat in Deptford, we'd have been on the floor of a van in seconds, asking fit young men with short hair if they wouldn't mind getting off our heads for a moment while we got comfortable. But in leafy, stuccoed Belgravia, the police are more inclined to believe you than not. I think it's included in their rates. As we signed our statements, they asked us not to do anything silly, like leave the country without informing the local station, and generally encouraged us to abide at every opportunity. 2 hours after he tried to break my arm, all that was left of Raina, first name unknown, was a smell. I let myself out of the house and felt pain creep back to the centre stage as I walked. I lit a cigarette and smoked my way down to the corner, where I turned left into a cobbled mews that had once housed horses. It had had to be an extremely rich horse who could afford to live here now, obviously, but the stabling character of the mews had hung about the place, and that's why it felt right to tether the bike there, with a bucket of oats and some straw under the back wheel. The bike was where I'd left it, which sounds like a dull remark, but isn't these days. Among bikers, leaving your machine in a dark place for more than an hour, even with padlock and alarm, and finding it still there when you come back, is something of a talking point, particularly when your bike is a Kawasaki ZZR 1100. Now, I won't deny that the Japanese were well offside at Pearl Harbor, and their ideas on preparing fish for the table are undoubtedly poor, but by golly, they do know some things about making motorcycles. Twist the throttle wide open in any gear on this machine, and it'd push your eyeballs to the back of your head. Alright, so maybe that's not a sensation most people are looking for in their choice of personal transportation, but since I'd won the bike in a game of backgammon, getting home with an outrageously fluky only throw 4-1 and 3 consecutive double sixes, I enjoyed it a lot. It was black and big, and it allowed even the average rider to visit other galaxies. I started the motor, revved it loud enough to wake a few fat Belgravian financiers, and set off for Notting Hill. I had to take it easy in the rain, so there was plenty of time for reflection on the night's business. The one thing that stayed in my mind, as I jinked the bike along the slick, yellow-lit streets, was Sarah telling me to drop that shit. And the reason I had to drop it was because there was a dying man in the room. Newtonian conversation, I thought to myself. The implication was that I could have kept on holding that shit if the room hadn't had a dying man in it. That cheered me up. I started to think that if I couldn't work things so that one day she and I would be together in a room with no dying man in it at all, then my name isn't James Fincham. Which of course it isn't.